Hey guys, Ian here. I have a quick question for you. Why do you think you struggle with willpower when other people make it look so easy? What do they know that you don't? I'll have the answer to that and more coming up. That said, my goal for this video is to show how you can be like the people who make things look easy. But before I do that, there's just one thing that's needed in order for that to be possible. And that is, if you think you aren't ready to learn more about willpower, then just stop watching right now. Because this video will only help those who are committed and have an open mind. If you're not committed or don't have an open mind, then please feel free to go do something else. Personally speaking, and this isn't to brag, but just to show you that I know what I'm talking about with regard to willpower. I've climbed Mount Fuji in Japan, I've gotten super fit, I run Tough Mudders and Spartan races, and I have a 6-figure salary job. Again, I'm not trying to be prideful here, I'm just trying to show you that I have experience with willpower. The connection that all these achievements share is that you need willpower in order to achieve them in the first place. And something I've learned over time is that willpower is actually a learned behavior and something you can learn too. So let's start with this. What is willpower exactly? Willpower is often described as the ability to exert self-control or otherwise restrain your impulses. When you don't have willpower, your bad habits like eating too much or being lazy start to be a problem and you feel powerless to do anything about it. When people think of willpower, they think of it as some magical thing that can't be changed or understood. Like whatever willpower you have is what you get and that's all there is to it. With that said, I'll just say this. Willpower is definitely a learned behavior, and it's something you can pick up too. Now, with that out of the way, let's go over what doesn't help with willpower. Some people say you just need to cut out your bad habits, or otherwise don't let your temptations get the better of you. Or just eat healthy and just get good sleep, as if it were really that easy. This is like telling someone to just drive their car every day when they have no gasoline. The main problem with this advice is that it's a bit out of touch and doesn't really help anyone with what's going on. As I mentioned in a previous video, telling people to just do it or just exert willpower does not work at all. If it really were that simple, then it wouldn't be such a big problem to begin with, now would it?
Damn son, that is one compelling argument.
With that all said, willpower is not what you think it is. When you think of someone with willpower, think of them as someone with a very strong desire for something. A desire that lasts for a long period of time. In other words, it's the ability to keep the thing you want most top of mind above everything else you might be craving. So I'll just tell you this, before you set out to achieve any goal, make sure it's something you really want. And I don't just mean something you kinda want or something that would be nice to have. I mean something you really want. It has to be so strong that it erases all doubt in your mind as to whether anything you're giving up will be worth it in the long run. So much so that you think about your goal all the time. Like a kid that will be going to Disneyland tomorrow. They're so excited that they can't even go to sleep because they know it'll be that good. That's how you need to hype up whatever goal you have in mind for yourself. That way you'll know if it's something you really want. Now, some of you might be thinking, how do I get excited when my goal is so far off in the future? How do I know if what I'm working towards will be really worth it? Well, let me flip the script and ask you this. Is staying the way you are really worth it? Is the momentary comfort worth giving up what you really want? Is it good enough for you? Now, I'm not going to tell you how to answer that question or how to live your life. Some people don't really want all that much. They're okay with how things are and don't really feel like doing anything about it. With that said, I'll just say this. If you're going to feel that way, then you need to give up the envy you feel when you see someone who has something you want. Because you were both given the same opportunity. You just chose to go down a different path. And they chose to master the art of delayed gratification. Speaking of delayed gratification, one of the most important parts of willpower is your ability to be patient, because anything worth getting is going to take time to achieve. It's like growing a plant. You can choose to plant the seed of anything you want, but it will only grow on its timeline and not yours. To give you a literal example, I once grew one of the most spiciest chili peppers in the world, otherwise known as the ghost chili pepper. From start to finish, it took me almost half a year. I took it from a seed to eventually it growing its first stem, and then eventually a sapling, and then eventually it turned into a full-on ghost chili pepper plant with its own peppers. But the important thing here is that I had to keep the plant top of mind, and I had to let it grow on its timeline and not mine. So in other words, you need to balance the anticipation of achieving your goal with the patience that it takes to eventually achieve it. And you do that by keeping the dream fresh and alive at all times, especially when you start to get discouraged. After all, my ghost chili pepper plant almost died several times while it was growing, but I refused to give up. And that's really the main difference between people who struggle with willpower and those who don't. The people who don't let themselves get discouraged are the ones who have the most willpower, and they do this by reframing any negative situations as positive instead. Because negative thoughts will kill your momentum the longer you dwell on them. But if you can reframe them as positives, then you'll avoid being discouraged and you'll almost always have the willpower to do what is necessary. Now, there's a very big mistake people tend to make when it comes to delayed gratification. They think that it's simply delaying what you want right now so you can enjoy it more later. That's really not how it works. Delayed gratification is about delaying what you want right now so you can achieve a higher tier of happiness later on. In other words, getting the things that give meaning to your life. This includes things like getting a good job, getting in great shape, finding the right person, getting a house and car, etc. So much so that whatever you wanted in the past no longer appeals to you as much as it once did, because what you have now is just so much more fulfilling. Now, depending on where you are in life, this all might sound a bit hard to believe, but really think about it. Have you ever had a time in your life where you ate a ton of food or played a ton of video games but still felt unsatisfied on the inside? Like it wasn't enough and you still needed more. It's because those things are artificial substitutes for the things that you really want. They might be able to give you temporary comfort to a degree, but they'll never be able to give you the higher tier of satisfaction that you really want. In fact, not only that, but these artificial substitutes are actually in your way. So instead of looking at your bad habits as a refuge for comfort, look at them as obstacles that are in your way. It really helps to shift your perspective when you actively think this way. For example, let's say you have trouble turning down free snacks. Instead of seeing it as turning down something that you want, instead look at it as being offered an obstacle that's in the way of what you really want. That way, the situation is no longer about resisting temptation. It's about preventing an obstacle from getting in the way of what you really want. Because temptations are always hard to say no to, but it's really easy to turn down obstacles. If your teacher asked if you'd like a harder test, you'd easily say no. If your boss asked if you'd like to be paid less, you'd also say no. And this is my point. Maintaining willpower and making the right decisions doesn't have to be so hard. It all just relies on you not seeing things as temptations, but rather obstacles that are in your way. This is why it's so important that you know what it is that you really want. Because if you don't know what it is that you really want, then how can you ever know if something is really in your way? Now, before I go, I just wanted to ask you the same question I asked at the beginning of this video. How do other people have the willpower to make achieving their goals look so easy when you don't? The answer is that they know what they really want. They know what they want and believe that staying the way they are now just isn't worth it. So much so that they keep their main desire at the forefront of their mind at all times and don't let themselves get easily discouraged. And they do that by reframing any negative moments as positive ones and now look at former temptations as obstacles in their way, all while understanding that the seed they're planting will follow its timeline and not theirs. And by doing all this, they'll achieve a higher tier of satisfaction that most people won't ever see. So I'll ask you, the person watching this video right now, what is it that you really want? Now, if you feel like this video helped you out, feel free to drop a like and consider subscribing, because I'm going to be covering off on more things like this in the future. Also, feel free to comment below with any advice or thoughts that you might have. And not only that, but if you make a good comment, I'll pin it at the top so everybody sees it. With that said, I'll see you in the next video.